Hey, everybody. I'm Aste Davis Robbins, and I am the Director of Climate Justice for the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. I want to welcome you tonight. And I was trying to think of how I would greet you all. I feel like as a facilitator, you're used to a person who is smiley and bubbly, but I feel like this is a moment of seriousness. Um, with everything that's going on with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act and the slashing of our congressional maps and all of the constitutional amendments we have on the ballot and our primary elections, I feel like it's time to take a breath and really pay attention to what's going on, really become intentional about how we show up in this world. This is not a time that we should get weary. This is a time that we should be informed, get a plan, and get to the voting booths like never before. I think by standing in our power, that we show our grit, we show our tenacity, and we show our desire for representation. I also want us to know that we shouldn't be silenced. We shall not be silenced. At this time, we should be more emboldened than ever and show up in greater droves than ever. So I would like to again greet you. Thank you for being here. And I hope that you're ready to listen with us, learn with us, and ask as many questions as you need to take this information and inform yourselves and inform a friend. So, without further ado, I have the pleasure of being your facilitator and introducing Sarah Rohani. She is the assistant counsel for the Legal Defense Fund. She has litigated voting rights cases nationwide at the trial and appellate level, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Sarah is a part of the LDF litigation team in Robinson versus Landry, the federal lawsuit that enjoined Louisiana's racially discriminatory congressional map and Louisiana v. Calais. Sarah has spearheaded LDF advocacy efforts at the state and county level and to combat voter suppression and tactics and co-led election protection efforts in recent cycles, including in Louisiana, to adopt fair and non-discriminatory redistricting plans. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Aste, and it's a real pleasure to be with everyone here this evening. So, I'm going to start off by talking about what the Supreme Court did in its ruling in Louisiana versus Calais. In a 6-3 ruling, purely across ideological lines, the court's decision in Calais struck down Louisiana's congressional map and eviscerated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which, opened the door for states across the country to enact discriminatory redistricting plans with virtual impunity. And I think, as Janae Nelson said, Janae Nelson, who's the president director counsel of the Legal Defense Fund, who also argued the case, said it was a day of infamy for the court and a day of devastation for our democracy. So, using the term, I think, disingenuous to describe the majority opinion written by Justice Alito is an understatement. So, Justice Alito explicitly denied overturning Section 2 and, in fact, said he was merely updating the framework that's used for these cases. But point blank, that's just a flimsy cover for avoiding any headlines that lay bare what the court actually did. In tangible terms, the court didn't declare Section 2 unconstitutional, but it rendered it dead letter law. They overturned the framework that has governed these cases for decades, where plaintiffs had to prove, three threshold factors to succeed on a claim. And I just want to highlight one of the most egregious changes, which is that there's now a requirement that Section 2 plaintiffs have to provide illustrative maps that maintain the current partisan makeup of the plan they're challenging. So basically, you have to prove that your vote is being diluted and that you are, structurally unable to elect your candidate of choice. You now have to present an illustrative plan that keeps in place the candidate that is not your candidate of choice. And what the court really did was resurrect what is known as the intent test that Congress itself explicitly rejected when it amended the Voting Rights Act. So that amendment was enacted in response to a Supreme Court opinion, which had required proof of, of intentional discrimination. And Congress understood then, 40 years ago, what remains true today, that discriminatory intent is easy to disguise and it's really nearly impossible to prove. And so the Section 2 test, as it was, closed that loophole. But the court really just reopened it and while pretending that they hadn't. And so I will next talk about where things currently stand. So obviously, immediately after the Calais decision came down, a little over 2 weeks ago, the majority of the court not only did nothing to delay its implementation, but they even, in a more bald-faced way, they actually waived their customary 32-day pause before making decisions final. So usually the Supreme Court, there is this waiting period before they procedurally issue judgment, and the district court is on pause from doing anything during that time, and it's to give the parties an opportunity to seek re-argument. But they waived that here, which all but ensured that states could rush to implement it right away, which Justice Jackson noted in her really phenomenal dissent from that order. So the current chaos that we're witnessing across the country is a result not just of the timing of the actual opinion 2 weeks ago, but of this technical order that agreed to issue the judgment immediately. And that order really has been understood by everyone now as the justices just signaling their willingness to have Calais go into effect this cycle, even though the court really could have just structured and timed its ruling and that order to prevent exactly that result. So I think as Justice Jackson made clear in her dissent, what we're seeing play out in front of us is the result of an active choice on the court's part. By late April, midterms were formally underway in most states. And even in states like South Carolina and Tennessee that have relatively late primaries, the candidate filing deadlines had come and gone. And I think many of us are also aware that in a number of recent decisions on election-related legal issues, including on the Robinson case several times, the court had placed great importance on what they refer to as this Purcell principle, which is the principle that courts should avoid doing anything to affect elections when actual voting is near. But we did not see that take place in this case when an election was actually occurring. So as a result of all of this, we have a late decade, mid-election gerrymandering rush that has already wiped out a majority Black congressional district in Tennessee, is all but certain to happen in Louisiana, now in Alabama and South Carolina, and could yet happen in Mississippi. And then turning specifically to Louisiana, here, as everyone is well aware, early votes in the primary suspended by Governor Landry had already been counted. And, in Mississippi's primaries are over, but they've indicated as well that those results could be reversed. So all of this that's happening is just a stunning departure from past procedure. And even though, the litigation tools have been weakened, in response, the litigation teams haven't stopped. I have some eye bags that hopefully the Zoom blur filter is helping out with, but I may not look like the headshot that was posted because LDF and others have been really actively filing litigation against, specifically in Louisiana, the suspension of the election. So we, right after the decision came out, filed two temporary restraining orders in state and federal court. We filed motions in the Supreme Court. We also filed a stay in the district court to stop the suspension of the election. But unfortunately, we have not been successful in these efforts. We are still waiting to hear back from the district court on our stay, but this is the same district court that decided the Calais opinion, and that decision is unlikely to happen before Saturday's election. So I'm very glad to be hearing from our other phenomenal speakers, and I am sorry to be ending on a note of losses, but I do just want everyone to know that we on our end are taking advantage of everything we have in our toolbox as litigators. We're filing every brief in motion we can. We're thinking through every course of action we have in litigation. But as I mentioned, the reach of litigation in this time has been weakened even further. It's obviously never been the only or the primary or even sometimes or a lot of times the best tool in the toolbox. But on our end at LDF, we are not giving up. We are not sleeping. We are doing everything we can in Louisiana. And I can put my email in the chat as well if anyone has questions about the litigation or would like to speak further. But that is it in terms of the update on the state of play after Calais.
Sarah, thank you so, so much. The passion is in your tone, and I don't see any bags, girl, so don't worry, you look great. But we really do appreciate all that you and LDF have been putting into it. We appreciate you not giving up, and I think that's what most voters want to hear, that we're still fighting, we're still trying to figure this out, even in the midst of what's going on. So thank you so much for coming and updating us all as well. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists who have been a part of this fight since the beginning as well. So I want you guys to know that they will have a lot of very just passionate commentary as well, just like Sarah. They've been a part of, like I said, this case since the beginning as well. So our first panelist is Jared Evans. Jared Evans currently serves as counsel for the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. He previously served as senior policy counsel with the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, where he served as LDF's census coordinator and led the planning and strategy challenges to Louisiana's congressional and state legislative maps during the post 2020 census redistricting cycle. Jared also led the Civil Rights and Racial Justice Coalition efforts in successfully pressuring Governor John Bel Edwards to veto the congressional map passed by the legislature that packed Black voters into one district. He testified for over 30 non-consecutive hours across four legislative sessions in favor of the map supported by the Robinson plaintiffs. Prior to his work at LDF, he held legislative and policy positions at the Louisiana Department of National Wildlife and Fisheries, the Louisiana House of Representatives, and served in the offices of former U.S. Senator Mary Landrieu and former Louisiana State Representative and Senator Rick Gallant. Welcome, Jared. Thank you so much for being here with us. And our second panelist is Commissioner Devontae Lewis. Devontae Lewis is a Louisiana social justice activist and civic leader dedicated to building people power through community engagement and public service. A Lake Charles native, he has held leadership roles ranging from student body president and educator to policy advocate focused on economic justice, education equity, and consumer protections. Devontae served with the Louisiana Budget Project before being elected in 2022 as the Louisiana Public Service Commissioner for the 3rd District, representing 10 parishes across the state. He continues to champion civic participation, youth empowerment, and equitable policies through public service and community advocacy. Devontae, thank you so much for being with us as well. Okay, so my first question of the night is for Devontae. Devontae, Tuesday night's committee hearing was unprecedented. There were locked hallways, fire marshal threats, debates until 4 a.m. What happened? And can you contextualize the moment for us?
Absolutely, absolutely, Aste, and a pleasure to be here with all of you. Yeah, so Tuesday was a unprecedented night that I've never seen in my almost 20 years being around the legislative process. Originally, we were told that the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee would meet on Wednesday morning to take amendments and potentially vote on a new congressional district map. And then very late in the afternoon on Monday, they did one of the things where they said, oh, never mind, we're going to meet um, upon adjournment on Tuesday. And for those of you who don't know, that basically means we're going to meet with an undisclosed time because upon adjournment is just whenever the Senate decides they're done with their business. They could come in and be done with their business for 5 minutes. They could stay and do their business for 5 hours. So it really was an attempt to try to suppress and depress public turnout by having to guess when they would finish their business. But that did not deter people. We saw people arrive to the Capitol as early as 11 a.m., around 2 p.m., to be there and just say, I'm going to sit here all day if I have to. Then, in one of the most surprising moves ever, they locked the Senate hallway. If you were inside the hallway when they decided to lock it, you were told you could not leave. I mean, you couldn't go to the vending machine to get a bottle or a soda. You couldn't go to the bathroom because the hallways have no bathrooms in them. They're on the outside of the hallway, and then they locked everybody else from coming in the hallway until they signed in and put their name in. Not signing up to speak. You just have to sign in to then get in the room. They allege that this was the fire marshal's doing. Uh, I've been there 20 years, and the only time I've ever seen the fire marshal there is when they're lobbying for a bill for the fire marshals. So this was clearly an attempt to take people's voices out of the process. So the Senate stayed in. They did not adjourn until around 5:30ish, 6 o'clock, and they did not start the committee until almost 7 p.m. that night. Um, and while we were there, people came, people testified, they poured their hearts out. We watched as members were very disrespectful to the public, making jokes about him, being rude. When Senator Morris, the author of the bill, walked in the committee room, I was sitting next to a few of the Democratic Black Caucus House members, and he looked at us and he said, "Hello, kiddos," showcasing how he just felt about us. But what we end up doing is we saw people stand up. People spoke out and they spoke their hearts and they continued. And while the Senate Republicans thought we were only going to come in at on Tuesday afternoon and not have a Wednesday morning vote, because so many of you all showed up, we kept them to their promise. They actually had to take a vote on Wednesday morning because we kept them in committee until 4:45 that morning, where on a 4-3 vote, they voted to approve Senate Bill 121, which would reduce uh, black representation in Congress and pack black voters into one district stretching from Baton Rouge to New Orleans along the river and creating 5 super white districts across the state. And that brought us to what we saw today. So Tuesday was an unprecedented day of lockouts, of an easement, and a marathon hearing that was over 10 hours long.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, hundreds of folks came out between Friday and Tuesday to oppose these maps. Jared, the today the bill actually with for the new maps passed through the Senate. What is the next part of this process, and where will people have more opportunity to plug in?
Well, good evening, Asti. Thank y'all for having me. We are only halfway through the legislative process. The Senate concluded their business today by passing the map on a party line vote, and the map that Devontae was just talking about now moves over to the House, where we anticipate it will be heard by the House and Governmental Affairs Committee, which has jurisdiction over redistricting and reapportionment. We anticipate that hearing will be early next week, most likely Tuesday. Again, the times have fluctuated and moved. The Senate and Governmental Affairs hearing on Friday was at 9:30. The one on Tuesday evening didn't start till 7 p.m. So we have no idea what they are going, when they're going to schedule this hearing. But they know, and we know that our communities will show up. That is without question. That is undisputed. They know it. We know it. We might not know what day or the hour that the hearing will be scheduled, but we know our communities will be in the room. Our voices will be heard. They might pack us into the smallest committee room available on Friday, which was just so insulting to all the folks who showed up and testified. There were no other Senate hearings taking place. The Senate had concluded their business for the week, and yet and still, when there were other much larger rooms available, they decided to have that hearing in the smallest room that the Senate has. So I would not be one bit surprised if that happens on the House side, if they pack us into one of the very small rooms on the ground floor. But look, we're going to show up. We'll fill up the overflow rooms just like we did on Friday and on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. So for everyone who's watching and who wants to participate, I encourage you to please follow Power Coalition on Facebook and on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is Power COEJ. We will be sharing information as soon as the hearing is scheduled, as they let us know the time and location.
Yeah, I would just want to say too, shout out to all the people who came out at such short notice. You guys came out in droves. Like, we didn't know what to expect, but we made the call and you all came out. And, although, things didn't go as we planned, we are constantly making a statement, guys. It is clear that the statement is being made, that people are watching. This is, accountability at its best. And so we just want to thank you all for showing up and holding those folks accountable. Jared, I also want, because we have these new maps, for you to explain how the new elections will take place.
So just today, Asti, just this week, or rather, the Republican majority decided that in addition to all the other chaos that has been hammered down on our state and on the voters, as you heard Sarah mention earlier, 42,000, over 42,000 absentee ballots had already been casted mere hours before in-person early voting was supposed to take place. The governor, in collusion with the attorney general and the secretary of state, suspended our congressional elections. And so voters have showed up to the polls during early voting and will show up to vote on this coming Saturday with signs at their polling location that say any ballots cast for Congress will not be counted. And there's lots of pending litigation on that case. So we, first of all, encourage everyone who goes out to vote this Saturday to please vote your entire ballot. You won't be penalized if you vote your entire ballot. We do not know how that case is going to play out, but please continue to vote for everything that is on your ballot. The legislature went through great lengths and great pains to move our congressional races to a closed primary system, meaning only Republicans can vote in a Republican primary and only Democrats can vote in a Democratic primary. But because the governor has suspended the elections and thrown everything into chaos, the legislature just this week, yesterday afternoon, moved the congressional races to November 4th when everything else will be on the ballot. So when you vote for a final U.S. senator this fall, there will be several other items on the ballot. You will also be voting for your candidate for Congress, and if no person in that race gets 50% of the vote in those races, they will go to a runoff in December.
Thank you for that, Jared. And as Jared said, there's other primary things still on your ballots. So, I know that, there's a little confusion around those congressional seats. However, if you have other things in your parish on your ballot, please be sure to cast your votes for that. So Devontae, I want to talk about the larger nationwide strategy. How are people able, where is our Fair Maps fight in the nationwide strategy, and how is it taking place as a strategy to disenfranchise Black voters?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, as you can see, it's been less than 2 full weeks since Calais came down. And just every southern state has either said they are going to redistrict, called a special session, did it in session. Tennessee called a special session and did theirs in 2 days. Georgia's governor came out today and said, even though he's not going to do it for the 2026 election, and even though next week, Georgia has their elections for their primaries for state legislature, Congress, and governor. He's going to call a special session between the primary and the runoff for Georgia to redistrict for 2028. So he's going to even call a session to redistrict before the new crop of legislators and members of Congress and even a new governor takes place. And so what we're seeing is this mass movement of the Confederate states to undo the racial progress that we have seen since the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And so now this is an all hands on deck mass mobilization. On Saturday, a multitude of civil rights organizations and leaders and people in this fight are going to be marching the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Saturday, May 16th. Sadly, a lot of us in Louisiana can't join them because we're going to make sure that everybody's out to get to vote, but we will be there in spirit. And we're seeing the solidarity where people are going to spend some of their time even doing some get out the vote efforts while they're all in Selma for us here in Louisiana. And so you're seeing this coalition of people start standing up because it's all of our fights, right? Tennessee losing a seat is a challenge for Louisiana losing a seat. It's a challenge for what we may see in other states as well. And so this is a movement now where you're seeing even states that are not in the South finding ways to respond to protect the South. And so we are seeing just across the board really what this moment means and how this affects everyone nationally. So you may not be losing a black congressional seat in Illinois or in New York or in California, but because the VRA is about protection for any seat that's redistricted, they are in jeopardy of losing seats on their city councils or their school boards or their county councils every in other places. And so this is why you're seeing a national movement, because while some states can protect themselves from the congressional redistricting, they can't protect themselves from local redistricting, which is typically local at the local hand. So that's why we're seeing states like Maryland pass a states voting rights act to ensure that the state of Maryland is protected and all communities in Maryland are protected, even if the National Voting Rights Act disappears. And so this is a movement that is happening across the country, and we're going to see everyone really joining hands to work together on this.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the other maps and the other seats that are in jeopardy, as a result of this, because I don't think people truly understand, the full rollout, right? That could be coming. Jared, is there any other legislation happening in the shadows of this fight that we need to keep an eye on, or any other legislation that we should be mobilizing and organizing around?
This particular legislative session, which thankfully ends on June 1st, has been one of the toughest in recent memory. The majority in the legislature have waged an all-out assault on Black political representation. One of the first bills they moved when session started last month or a few weeks ago was to eliminate the seat of Calvin Duncan, who was duly and overwhelmingly elected as the criminal clerk of court in Orleans Parish. They moved with such speed. One of the members of Senate of the House and Government Affairs said we didn't know the Secretary of State's office could move that fast. Because when it comes to expanding rights for minorities, all of a sudden they've got a Charlie horse. There's delays and they don't have the resources to move. But when it comes to reducing the impact that minorities can have on the political process, all of a sudden everyone has time. So that is the first thing that they did was to eliminate the seat of Calvin Duncan. There is pending litigation around that situation. The same author of the maps that you've heard about tonight, who sponsored all of these bills that I'm talking about, has also moved to eliminate the seats of Black judges in New Orleans to consolidate some of the court systems, which we know will just lead to further injustices, more delayed times for hearings, fewer opportunities to be heard in court. And as you already heard, they've moved the primaries to open primaries in November with very little notice. We'll see how the Secretary of State does with educating the public on that. And we are looking to see what they do with the legislative maps. As I've tried to warn as many people who will listen, the battle right now is just for Congress. We fully anticipate and are expecting another war over the state house and senate maps, if not this summer, definitely sometime next year.
So, can you explain to someone in the in our question and answer portion wanted to know, is like this the end of the process? Was this the last bill about maps that could be introduced? Are we, done thinking about what a 4-2 map looks like?
Most likely for this session, yes. They, as we've, done our best to be realistic about, setting expectations. The Republicans, the majority in the legislature, they have the votes to do what they want. As they have shown on Friday, and as they showed Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, when they heard hours and hours of testimony from the public that Devontae spoke about, that he testified in. Giving arguments as to why a different map would be better. They are going to do what they want to do, irrespective of how hard we protest. So we are hopeful that this is the end, but we certainly are watching to see what they do next.
All right. The other part of that question is, can they continue to participate in advocating? Is there another chance to put in green and red cards?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have 2 days of mass mobilization, 2 calls to action. The first will be either most likely Tuesday, possibly Wednesday next week, when the House and Governmental Affairs takes up SB 121, the map with just one majority Black district. That will be the first opportunity. And then whenever final passage in the House takes place, it is all hands on deck. And so, again, please follow Power Coalition for Equity and Justice on Facebook and Instagram and on all other social media platforms. You can also follow ACLU Louisiana, ACLU_Louisiana, for the latest updates. So please follow us and be on the lookout for a notice. And we will certainly be posting when we have final word on when the hearing is scheduled.
Awesome. Devontae, could you tell us if we had if we kept our hope and that this bill did not make it out of committee, what might that mean for us?
I mean, it means we can go back. I mean, I think the thing that we heard and we're consistently hearing is that the Supreme Court said Louisiana couldn't have a 4-2 map. That's
Right.
not
That's
what
not what they
Calais
said.
said at all. It
Mhm.
said District 6. That
Mhm.
was one of the two of the 4-2. That district is unconstitutional. Therefore, the map must be redrawn. They did not throw out the concept or the idea of fair and just representation. They just said this configuration that I remind you was the configuration that Jeff Landry came up with, that Jeff Landry said was the only bill he would sign, that Jeff Landry then signed into law, that then Jeff Landry and Liz Murrow said was a legal constitutional map, that then fought for that map in the district court and in the Supreme Court. And then one day, when Donald Trump called, all of a sudden the work that they had put in is now unconstitutional. So we got to remind them of why we are here. We are not here because Black people got fair representation in Louisiana. We are here because Jeff Landry and Liz Murrow want to respond to Donald Trump. And so that means that we still have opportunities to stop it. It's unlikely, as Jared just told you, but we can still hopefully pass an amendment on Senate Bill 121 in House and Governmental Affairs and go back to a 4-2. And I'm sure we're going to see an amendment for that. We still have the House floor where they can add an amendment to 121. And then we have potentially maybe even conference committee. When Jared talked about changing the election and the primaries, I want to remind everybody, this didn't happen at a public hearing. This wasn't an independent bill. They used a rare legislative feat, which is called a conference committee. And a conference committee is when a bill has been passed by both the House and the Senate, but there are some amendments that maybe one side or another doesn't agree with. So they say, okay, we're going to reject the bill as it is now. We're going to have a few members of the Senate, a few members of the House huddle together, bring us an amendment, and then both bodies have to vote back on it. That's how they changed the election. They snuck changing the election in a conference committee report and gave members literally 5 minutes of time before they voted. So when we say it's not done, it's not done. We can still fight. We're going to continue to fight. And I'm pretty sure after the fight, and if they sign a 5-1 map, and we know this is a racial gerrymandering based off of what Senator Morris said on the floor today when he said, I am drawing District 6 this way to preserve history. What history are you preserving, Senator Morris? Because Louisiana and District 2, excuse me, was always drawn that way to pack black people. So he said it. So I think we still got
Mhm.
grounds to show he intended to be racially discriminatory against black people because he intended to draw a map that protected Louisiana's historical heritage. So to say that hope is done, no, we got to keep pushing on. And after we legislate, then we got to agitate, and then we'll go back to litigate. So the work still continues.
Well, that gave me some hope. I hope that gave everybody else a little hope. Things can happen. We do have some tools in our toolbox. Okay, Kelly said you're giving her some hope too. Happy to hear it. But yeah, I feel like looking at the map myself, it went from a snake to a worm, of the way that they drew the district. So I'm hopeful that we can uh, submit some amendments and change the shapes of some of these things since the snake was so problematic. I just wanted to throw that in there. But I want to thank you two so much for giving us such a lively discussion on this, for giving us your expert knowledge. Thank you for showing up and being there, being amongst the people. And Devontae, I saw you there all night and morning at the Tuesday hearing, front row center, and we appreciate the dedication. So, on behalf of, I'm a Louisiana voter too. So, on behalf of Louisiana voters, I appreciate you for being here, and Power Coalition appreciates you as well.
Hey, absolutely. That is my grandmother, my great grandmother was singing that song all night and all day. The angels were watching me, and that's what probably kept me up. So I'll keep doing it.
Thank you so much. So, as I mentioned, you guys, we have a lot of serious things on the ballot, on the discussion block for today. And one of the second, besides the maps and the redistricting conversation, are the constitutional amendments that are coming up. And so we have our great next panelist, next speaker, Sarah Amojala, is the director of the Vera Institute of Justice, Louisiana's office, and she leads the team's work to safely reduce incarceration and advocate for violence prevention through increased community investments. Sarah is a seasoned policy advocate with over a decade of successful social justice advocacy and policy development expertise. And we appreciate you so much for being here with us, Sarah. I'm going to just hand it over to you to tell everybody about what is on the ballot with these amendments and what these things mean. I think a lot of people just want to break down.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to see all of these folks who are here, who are ready to, learn about what's at stake. So I am here as a member of the Liberty and Dignity Coalition. We're a coalition that came together about 2 years ago now, to really shift the politics on all of our issues, and that is everything from criminal justice to also education to economic justice, environmental and climate justice, all of those things. And so, what's at stake on this ballot, right, is the same thing that was at stake every time we have a constitutional amendment proposal. It's our power. Our power is always at stake. And so, what we have here is the you know, like five constitutional amendment proposals that would take power away from Louisianans. And so we're asking the, people to go out and make sure to vote no. This is all part, right, of the same movement that's been happening around the weakening of our voices at the polls, a weakening of our electoral voice and our vote. And so just there are a lot of people who are wondering, like, what can I do? What is there left to do? There's a lot of people call it voter apathy, but it's actually voter suppression, right? If you think that your vote doesn't mean anything, it's because people have worked to make your vote not mean anything, right? And so that's what's at stake with this. And so altogether, we are, we are working to have safe, thriving Louisiana communities, and these amendments get in the way of that. I would love to share my screen if that is possible. And then also, if we can put in the chat, let me see how I can share my screen if that is possible. Yes, I found it. Oh, no, wait. Maybe I can. I don't know.
You should be able to now. You're a co-host now.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And also apologies to our to folks because I have been dealing with a very sick child, and so I it's late to the party today. Okay. All right. Folks see my screen. I'm gonna I can okay, look good. Okay, so if you go to the knowonall.org, you will see information about all of the amendments. We are asking people to vote no on all of the amendments, and the breakdown of them is these. The First Amendment proposal is really looking at politically interfering in state jobs. These are jobs that are protected by the Civil Service Commission, that are jobs that, the protections, all of the security and fairness of these jobs is already legislated by a body, and this would actually let lawmakers and political electeds decide which state jobs are protected and which jobs are not. That is not helpful. It weakens those civil service protections that we all have agreed to, that the state has created, and it opens the door to a lot of political influence over hiring and job security. That's not fair. That's a vote no. Amendment 2 and 4 are both putting school funding at risk. They're eliminating. So, Amendment 2 specifically is creating a special, separate school system in Baton Rouge, which, yes, the entire state is able to weigh in on what that looks like. And that is because education resources will be pulled away from the public education system to put into this special school system of people who are mostly affluent and wealthy, right? And so it's taking taxes away from the rest of East Baton Rouge Parish. And that change in the tax structure is what makes it something that all of us in Louisiana can weigh in on. And it is, a separate. It would benefit only a few people, and so we're voting no on that one too. That would be fewer resources for public schools. Amendment 4 also is going to allow for exemptions, and we'll get to that a little bit more when I get to 4. But that allows for exemptions for businesses, and business taxes go into school and education funds, right? And so without that revenue, and with the taking of revenue for St. George, we are really, really eliminating the amount of money that's available for public schools. People have said, "Oh, this will lead to a tax to raise for teachers." It won't. It won't, and it can't, because money is coming out. There will be less money for education funds, and there will be money being taken from the education funds and from the public education system and being given to a separate school district. And so what's clear is that there would not be any money for any raises. And so that is just mixed direction. Um, just like we talked about, there is an elimination of these. Amendment 3 is about eliminating education funds. So again, there are no pay raises here, right? These funds that are being eliminated are actually supposed to pay for schools, and schools and education systems across the state rely on these every year. This basically is another way that we're going to, consolidate, eliminate these funds, and then there will be no money for the public school system. These are not helpful things. And the other thing that I want to tell people too is like, people sometimes are like, okay, well, we do work on criminal justice at Vera. And people wonder, like, okay, well, what do criminal justice folks care about? Why do criminal justice folks care about, education or things like that? And the reason we care about stuff like this is because we know that the failure of social systems and supports are really, like, those failures lead into the criminal legal system. The criminal legal system is the catch basin for all other systemic failures. And so we need to make sure that we are spending money and investing further upstream so that we have safe, thriving communities. Um, uh, just like I discussed really quickly, Amendment 4 is about exempting businesses from certain taxes and eliminating those taxes, which are a key source of funding for schools and local services. And finally, Amendment 5 is about raising the age of uh, 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 allowing judges to stay on the bench for longer. So currently, the retirement age for judges is 70. This would raise it to 75. People are like, it's just 5 years. But that would allow, so if you entered into, got onto the bench at around 75, you could be on the bench well into your 80s. Essentially, what this will allow is that we would have judges serving for longer terms and we wouldn't have turnover on the bench. And so people would eventually, the representation of, like our representation on the bench would be out of touch, right? And so basically, with fewer openings, there are fewer opportunities to elect new judges and like make sure that the judges are actually representative of the population and of the times, right? And reinforce uh, existing inequities in the court system and then also in our laws, right? And this has been up on the ballot many times, and this has been voted down many times, 3 times, I believe. And the same for amendments 3 and 4. Last year, March 2025, we actually voted down as a state, voted these down, and rejected them resoundingly, like at about 64%. So vote no on them all, every single one of these. Make sure to tell everyone you know, and everyone on your block, everyone in your family, everyone you work with to vote no. So that we can really get the thriving Louisiana communities that we deserve. I will stop there. I think I've spoken for a bit, and I guess I will stop. I'll stop sharing. But again, this website is noonall.org, and then you can go into all of the amendments if you would like. All right, I'll stop
Thank
sharing.
you so much, Sarah. Also, Power Coalition has, very similar aligned wording on our sample ballots. So if you are looking for a sample ballot with everything for your parish, you can go to powercoalition.org/GOTV and find your ballot, to be sure that you know what to look out for. Um, we do have a question. If you're okay with taking a question, Sarah.
Sure.
Okay. There's some folks want to know about the Black judges who are older. Can you give a bit more details on how this could hurt the community if they voted yes?
So this amendment applies to all judges. So it's not just about Black judges who are older, it's about all judges. And what we do know, and of course, we always want more representation. So we would want the bench, right, across the state to be more representative of our communities. That is not happening right now, right? So we don't have a representative bench. And so we would want more judges of color, more judges who are Black, more judges who are um, women, and all other races who are part of the Louisiana community on the bench. This is about retirement age and this is about term limits. And so for all judges, what we are looking for and what people are frequently looking for is um, our term limits and the turnover of the bench so that it is more representative of our communities. And so sure, judges who are older of all races will come off the bench for this, but also they are able to finish their terms, right? And so say you get on the bench at 70, you are able to finish your term. So it's not that they turn 70 and then we're immediately saying get off the bench. It's after your term is done, after you're 70, you finish up and roll off of the bench, right? And for some folks it's still 75. Let's just be very honest, it's still 75 when they actually get off, but it's that we're actually doing the turnover and the term limits like we are supposed to, and that makes sense, right? I think, something to like allude to on this is, there's these conversations about people wanting, the current president to have more terms, right? People, we have agreed as a country and we have agreed as a state that term limits are important, and they're helpful to the efficient running of our systems, right? And so that's what my response is on that. I also see a question here about there being more amendments. Will there be more amendments? I think the answer is probably, right? The answer is probably. There are a lot of amendments under this governor, and we haven't seen so many amendments in a long time. I think in years past, before this governor's uh, administration. This is not how, and before this current legislature, right? This is not how laws were made. We were not coming to vote all the time on amendments. And we're not, being governed by fiat, right? And so, a lot of the issues that we're seeing are these kind of end runs to try and do things against the will of the people and doing them in this way. So there, yes, will there be amendments, more amendments? Probably. And we are going to have to keep exercising our vote and rejecting amendments that are not for the good of the people, and amendments that get in the way of those thriving Louisiana communities that I discussed, and also amendments that are seeking to defund our social service systems and our public education. So, yes.
All righty. I hope you guys one of our staff has put in the chat that there will be at least three more amendments on your November 3rd ballot.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's important for us to say too that the reason that you should always kind of be cautious of amendments to the Constitution is because it's really hard to change them and get them out of the Constitution. And so, if we want laws to pass, there's other ways for these things to happen over time, but to enshrine them in the Constitution, it's I won't say completely permanent, but it takes a very long time to get
Yeah.
things out of our Constitution. So just, keep that in mind as they come up because Sarah's right, they'll probably continue to come up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to make sure it gives time for any more questions if anybody has any more. But we really appreciate you joining us, especially with the sick child. I hope
Yeah.
your baby feels better.
Yes, I
I
hope so
know this
too.
is really important, but I also know
Yeah.
that is the most important. So I really appreciate you jumping on.
Yes, 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 yes. I'm always happy to come and talk about all of these things and work together with Power Coalition, and this work is super important. I also like think about the fact that I would like my babies to be able to be represented in maps, and so this work is super important, and I'm always happy to do this work with y'all and follow y'all's lead all the time. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So now we will transition to our North Louisiana organizer, Billy Anderson, and he'll talk to you guys about getting involved with Power Coalition, getting involved on election day, and joining us to help us do some of the very hard work. So, Billy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'll stay.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you again. And I believe the stage has been set from all of our panelists and the long 2 weeks that we've had fighting in the state legislature. Like everyone mentioned, all of our panelists tonight, this election is important. We must come out in droves and continue to come out in droves and defeat these harmful amendments. And, and, and to say that there are thousands of Louisianans who are unaware that there is an election this Saturday, who are also unaware of what these constitutional amendments mean. So we need your help. We need your help getting out the word, working on that ladder of engagement, whether it's canvassing, door knocking, phone banking, texting. We need your help in all of our offices. So if you're in the New Orleans area, the information is on the screen to scan. There are phone banking opportunities also in Baton Rouge and in Shreveport. Now, if you aren't in any of those areas and you would still like to phone bank from your home, or you would like to text bank, or even work election protection, just fill out or scan any of the QR codes and someone will match you in that area with a statewide phone bank where you can call and get Louisianans all over the state out to vote on Saturday. And then also, when you sign up to be a volunteer, we have your information. So anytime that you want to volunteer with Power or help get other folks involved, we'll be sending you emails and with Mobilize so that you can stay involved not only on election day, but you can continue to build power in your community. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you, Billy. We also, for folks who couldn't catch the QR codes, they are linked in the chat. So if you need those links, just head to the chat and they're there to sign up and join us. And before we close, I want to invite everybody to take the Power Voter Pledge. It's something we do at Power Coalition to bring folks in and make sure that you stay in as a power voter. And so the first part of the pledge is that you'll vote in every election. You'll educate yourself about the candidates and take at least one person with you to the polls. So that's your uncle, I've seen people dragging their spouses to the polls. We're going to make sure that the people around us are engaged as well, right? The second one is you're going to hold your elected officials accountable by attending a community forum, educating them on issues, or reaching out to them about important legislation. And if you follow Power Coalition, we're always, reaching out to our elected officials and, using our voices via email or showing up to meetings to let them know that, we put them in the seats. And number three is to advocate for equity and justice in my community. So it's very simple. You just head to pcej.org/power voter. And it's a really quick thing, and we'll send you information about elections to hold you accountable, and also send you the information as we have events in your community. So the pledge is there on the screen, and it's also in the chat. So please click the link or use the QR code to fill out that power pledge. And last but not least, I want to leave you with these super important dates for the election calendar. As we told you guys, election day is on the 16th, this Saturday. Someone said there's no hyperlink. So can we fix that in the chat? But election day, the current one for the primaries and the constitutional amendments we were talking about, that is on the 16th, this Saturday. We also have the second primary coming up on June 27th. We'll have the congressional general and open primary on November 3rd, and we'll have the open general on December 12th. And as you can see above those election dates are the ones that I'm always pushing to family and friends. Don't wait to go vote, early vote so that you're not fighting torrential rains that we have here in Louisiana, so that you're not fighting long lines, so that you can just get it out of the way. Be sure to encourage your friends to early vote. And if you can't vote in person, there's also mail-in options below here. So if you'd like to screenshot this, it is available. Also, if you aren't registered to vote, you can do that on our website as well at pcej.org/register to vote. And you can send our website to anybody you'd like to have them registered to vote. It's open to all of us. Okie dokie. I think that is everything. Thank you guys so much again for joining us. I hope that you are leaving informed, you are leaving with some hope, and you are leaving with some marching orders to get informed, to grab a friend, and to go and vote in this election and in all of the rest that are coming up. We appreciate you so much and hope to see you soon. Thank you.